So President Trump celebrating the first year of his second term in a record-long State of the Union address and highlighting all of the economic wins under his administration. He's telling Americans to focus on what the White House has already done to make the country thrive.
More Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. 100% of all jobs created under my administration have been in the private sector. We cut a record number of job-killing regulations, and in 1 year we have lifted 2.4 million Americans, a record, off of food stamps. And for all of these reasons, I say tonight, members of Congress, the state of our union is strong.
The president is also looking forward, telling Congress to codify his health care framework, urging a ban on investor home buying, announcing a new retirement plan, and moving to shield Americans from rising power bills. So, Josh, we've spent a lot of time in the last hour talking about the retirement plan. We touched a little bit on the stock trading ban. What was sort of your key takeaway when it comes to economics and some of the look back, but also future proposals that you heard about?
I think the biggest takeaway was the focus on the success of the U.S. economy right now, because I come at this often from a market standpoint, right? What matters for investors? How is it impacting? How is the economy impacting the market? How's policy impacting the market? And I think what you've seen for much of the start of 2026 has been a stock market that is trading on a strong U.S. economy and expectations of the U.S. economy staying strong. And you look at the data that we've gotten in recent weeks, and it really supports a lot of what the president is saying. I mean, the unemployment rate moved back to 4.3%, right? So you've seen labor market stabilization. You think about the GDP print that we got. If you zoom out for all of 2025, 2.2% annualized growth for the full year. That's solid, right? And you think forward looking out into 26, that seems to be the broad expectation right now. So that, I think, is why you didn't see necessarily a massive move in the market today in reaction to this, but you saw, it was okay.
Brian, I come to you because you're my skeptic here. Okay. And I'm curious about, there are some statistics, and I'll put this chart out on social because I didn't get it to the team, but new durable goods orders are a leading indicator to a strong economy, and you have credit spreads trading still near all-time low. So that's sort of that future sign that the economy is roaring. Okay. But on the other hand, we kind of talked about real wage growth, and we're a little surprised that it's only been up a couple or 2%. We need more than a year of 1% real wages to dig us out of a 5-year hole. We need time, and we need it to be bigger than that. Am I too skeptical here?
Yes. So I think you're operating on the midterm timeline. Are you operating on the midterm timeline? I understand why. We talk about midterms all the time. I think it's the wrong timeline. The economy does not operate on a midterm timeline. I don't know if what you want is going to fully materialize by the time people go to vote in the midterms. It might not. I'm okay with that. I've already said on this show why I'm okay with that. I think the bigger issue is 2028 election, not 2026 midterms. So I don't mind that. What I liked about the president last night is I don't feel like he went out there and did this big bragging thing about the economy. He gave what he thought were the good points. He talked about what he's doing, but I don't think he tried to tell people, feel differently if you don't agree with me.
Right.
I think what he said is, I think what he mostly said was, we're going to prove it to you, okay? And that's what I wanted him to do. So I'm not a skeptic about this economy. And I like that he avoided, the last thing I'll say is, I like that he avoided, in my view, the things that I think are the gimmicks, okay? He just stuck with his bread and butter. He stuck with the things that are going to pay long-term dividends for the economy.
You know what? You're right. We didn't get a lot of the 50-year mortgages, the portable mortgages, the assumable mortgages, the taking out a 401k money to do a down payment. Those are sort of the gimmicks that you'd been talking about.
Yeah, I just didn't hear that. I mean, it was kind of interesting. We talk about the economy in this. The economy was a big part of the speech, but I didn't feel like it was a long, boring laundry list of economic stats either. I think he made his case crisply, but he put it in the context of everything else he is doing in this country and outside of our borders. And to me, his strongest case to America is the whole thing. Not the pieces, but the power of the America First agenda as a whole.
Jackie, that's sort of where you come in, because you often talk about the spigots and the wheel. In the soundbite at the top of the hour, I liked how we talked about re-leveraging up the private sector, and we talked about the jobs report, where it was actually 170,000 jobs because the government lost jobs, but the private sector got more jobs. He talked about deregulation. We could talk about the stock trading ban as well, so that the American people feel like this game isn't rigged against us, with Nancy Pelosi becoming millionaires overnight. Your thoughts?
My read between the lines last night was partially what you're alluding to, Brian, that, you know, the president said, we've made tremendous strides on the economy. Here's how. It's not perfect, but we've done a lot. We're going to do more. I've stopped the bleeding. Listen, we were on a track to continue spending ourselves into a deeper, deeper black hole than we've ever been in. So I don't think that he chose, Brian, to your point, to gaslight or tailor to some of those gimmicks that you mentioned to go along that route. You know, some of the gimmicks were just points of conversation that were ideas that were being batted around to see how he could improve situations. But when he talks about us being back, we are on the track. The engine is revving up to be back and hot. And globally, to the other pieces that you're talking about, whether it's foreign policy or the open borders that he's now closed, he's sort of reestablished America's standing on the national stage, which is so important, and it helps rev that engine. So all things considered, I mean, I really think that he hit it out of the park last night, and we brought this up in the first hour. I think the Democrats did themselves a disservice when he's talking about love of country and he's talking about nationalism here, and they can't stand up and they can't clap and they can't support somebody because they hate him so much, because their Trump derangement syndrome has gone so overboard that they can't even see clearly on the issues anymore.
There's one issue that I love that I wish was getting more attention, Jerry, and it's not. It is about tariffs replacing an income tax. Take a listen to what the president had to say.
I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love.
Now, we know that right now the math doesn't line up, and we can argue about who really pays that tariff tax. But what I like about the concept is that you tax consumption instead of work. And we're always talking about how do we incentivize people to work, to get up out there, to make sure that my take-home pay feels worth it to me, so that I don't have to work 6 months out of the year, give that to the government before I get something in my pocket. Your thoughts?
Great point. Really good analysis. I was going to focus just a little bit on something going right with this economy, because I always look at the consumer, just as you started there. How are people motivated to spend and save? Consumer spending has not fallen out of bed here. I mean, you've got to say people are still spending money. Nominal spending growth 4.8% year over year. That's a huge number. You know, we see these consumer sentiment numbers fall, right? But you and I and everybody else who watches this show, you know that people say one thing and they do another when it comes to their money. They go out and spend even though maybe they shouldn't,
Why are you
right?
looking at me?
I was trying to distract people from the fact that I said that,
Domino's,
because anybody who knows me.
Whatever.
Anyway, I think that the Virginia Governor Spanberger talking about how tariffs are a tax on people, she is putting taxes on people. And I know you've got some sound from her you want to play.
Yeah, good point. Let's play that sound.
Everyday Americans are paying the price. And even though the Supreme Court struck these tariffs down 4 days ago, the damage to us, the American people, has already been done. Meanwhile, the president is planning for new tariffs, another massive tax hike on you and your family. And Republicans in Congress, they remain unwilling to assert their constitutional authority to stop him.
Josh, what do you make of that about the new tariffs?
Yeah.
We haven't seen it impact the market. I think the market is responding to a lot of the AI, still more of a software issue. And then I come out with this, and what if I tell you a note I read this morning says we could get a big, beautiful bill 2.0, 80% likely by July 4th again, with more of what we got last year juiced up again in terms of tax cuts. Does that then help offset if there are those 10 to 15%?
Wait, hold on. Did anybody actually watch Abigail Spanberger live? I just want to know before we start giving her time. Did anybody watch her live?
No.
No.
I did, and I wish I didn't.
Why?
Now, having said that, you go ahead and interact.
Well, I think the market has been waiting for more of that big, beautiful bill stimulus, right? So I do think that would be a tailwind, Taylor. But I was going to respond to the soundbite there just in the sense of that is not the consensus on Wall Street right now among economists that are simply trying to look at the new tariffs or the new base tariff rate, right? How is that going to impact inflation in terms of the Fed, right? How is that going to impact consumers? Goldman Sachs said for the rest of 2026, they see it increasing inflation by 0.1% to consumer prices. Let's be realistic here. If it is 0.1%, that would not be a large increase to inflation, right? That is not a large tax on the American consumer. 0.1% is not that big of a number.
But let me tell you what are big numbers, and that's what Spanberger's folks are doing in the Virginia General Assembly, where they're suggesting 50 new taxes. So she's complaining about tariffs. Yeah. But what are they doing in Virginia? Dry cleaning tax, dog walking tax, Uber taxes, fantasy sports. I mean, come on. This is real.
She's going to lecture us about tariffs?
I know.
Right. She also is famous for her spin of saying we can't call it socialism because people get scared of that. She is a liar. She is a spinner. She's grabbing onto the tariff issue to say President Trump has hurt people more than President Biden hurt people when inflation went up to 9+%.
Yeah.
Short memory.
I'm with you.
More people on this panel now just watched her than did last night after Trump's
It was
State
late.
of the Union.
It was a late
You know
day.
what? If you want to laugh, go watch it. She would like say something, and they had this crowd around her, and they would clap for like 3 seconds. It was really weird.
Yeah.
It was very lame.
Well, I don't
And
think
was there.
Americans are. I think they're smart enough not to be lied to. So like when you talk about the new taxes that she's doing in her state, people understand that, like the bait and the switch. At least I do.
But on a national level, nobody's following her. So when she does the comments after the speech, like, oh, okay, she thinks that. And then you realize, like, she's talking both sides of this.
Yeah.
Can I also say one thing? When you put that person up there for the rebuttal, you're sort of putting them out as a face of the Democrat Party that you believe is kind of leading the way for the future. If she's holding their Olympic torch for them, they've got a big problem.